Today is the last Sunday before Advent, and as always, it is the Feast of Christ the King. More particularly titled the Feast of Christ, the King of the Universe. It's an interesting title when you think about it, considering the times that we are living in the state of the church, as we really have read for the last 20 years, scandal after scandal, controversy after controversy. That title right now seems rather odd. I dare say, at first read, the title is simply, at the most, not true, or at the least, in the times that we are living in, calls into question in the heart of the believer the Lord's actual kingship. And don't mistake, I'm not saying he's not king. I just think it needs to be addressed within the times that we're living in, that the underlying question of people's faith may in factually be that. Where is Christ? At least from a worldly perspective, one might gather that there is in fact a Christian kingdom, also known as the church. But there again, the kingdom is divided. 53,000 different Christian denominations. Oppressed. How many times do we try to advance the gospel only to run into another roadblock? Rejected, most especially by those that we love. And as we see them fall away and not practice the faith, despite how much we may pray. And in some cases throughout the world, in many cases, martyred. There have been more martyrs in the last 100 years than ever before in the history of the church. It could be argued that the majority of its members do not live by the laws that the king has set in place. And some of its members even publicly oppose and attack the very laws and the way they claim to believe in sort of a spiritual treason. And yet they are not excommunicated. They're not even opposed. They seemingly get their way. And if this was not challenging enough, there seems to be a silence on behalf of the King in heaven. A silence in the midst of this confusion and destruction over the very kingdom that he claims to reign over. And so we may ask, even though we don't admit to it, what's going on? Where are you, Lord? And there are several answers to this legitimate question. First, Christ does not have the power to do anything. Well, clearly this is unbelievably false, as he's God, and he has proved that to us with the resurrection and multiple miracles throughout the gospel, not to mention 2,000 years of some of the greatest saints that the world has ever seen that had unbelievable power. Miraculous things happening over the last 2,000 years. So in fact, we can truthfully and solidly conclude that Jesus is God and has the power. Maybe Christ, although he has the power, could simply care less about our time and therefore refuses to use it. Again, this is proven false by the fact that Paul tells us that Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He doesn't change his mind. And so as he has acted on defense of his people, he will in fact do again. The Lord is subjecting the world and the church to some sort of a test. Maybe. Possibly. Probably. Finally, the Lord is doing something that we simply do not understand and are not patient enough to endure. I think it can be argued that this is the most likely scenario, as this is always the case in human history. But we do have some clues as to what is happening right now, but they take a discerning heart, one that is deeply connected to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. First, we have Christ's life in the gospel, and we know from what the Catechism of the Catholic Church teaches that the church, before the Lord's return, and as a matter of fact, is pretty much a definitive sign that Jesus is coming back, but before the Lord's return, the church must pass through the same trials and tribulations that Jesus did. Now, this is where it gets very interesting, because the church, as we can see historically, has already been through much of the Lord's life. Symbolically, what do I mean? Well, a small review. He was immediately persecuted by Herod. From our inception in the time of the apostles and the early Christians, we were immediately persecuted by Rome and the Jews. And I would speculate that if one lived during their time, they would feel much like us. And yet they made it. Jesus had his 40 days in the desert. We had the age of the church fathers, lasted about 500 years in the desert. Small and discerning as the church became tested and holy. And after this time in the desert, we have his ministry that started small and grows to the heights, followed by the monumental conclusion of the passion, betrayal, and death, and then finally the victorious resurrection. And so likewise, after the church fathers in the desert, we had the beginning of a massive spread of evangelization of the gospel throughout the entire world. One of the greatest, if not the greatest, movement in human history. Nothing has ever been seen like it. Followed by, in church time, very recently, the betrayal of Martin Luther, Ulrich Zwingli, and Henry VIII in the Reformation, which then leads us to the point we are at now. Just like all left during his passion, except for the chosen faithful, so it is in our time as the church faces her final stretch in this 2,000-year cycle. You see, just like her Lord, it is no wonder that she has been abandoned by most, because all that awaits her is the actual passion. Just as Jesus suffered, so must and will the church. Now, this is the clarity that we're looking for. As the chosen few who are still faithful in a world that thinks we're ridiculous. This feast is clarified and summed up by the Lord's words to Pontius Pilate in his own passion when he says, "My kingdom is not of this world." And at the Last Supper when he prays, not for the world, but for those who have been rescued out of the world, his faithful. And so I'm sorry to tell you, but this world and its ways have been eternally condemned, turned over to itself. And those who embrace it will face the same fate. So be mindful of yourselves. In order to understand Christ as King and his kingdom, like when he was on earth, so now, we need to think radically differently. Jesus as king did not come to reign in this fallen, condemned world. Why would he? It's not worthy of him. Jesus as king came to save us, and that is the only reason that he came. And what that means for the believer is to get us out of this world and into the realm where he reigns, because that's what your will desires. The realm of heaven, the realm, as Peter would say, of a new heavens and a new earth that are one and the same, where in fact Christ will be the ultimate king and our will be conformed to his perfectly. Don't get me wrong, he is definitely king here. But this kingdom is also occupied by the enemy. We let him in, remember? And the enemy is easily overcome and overthrown by the power of the church, but the church has to use her power, which means that her followers have to obey the will of God, which is her teaching. We are only as strong as we are obedient, both in our personal lives and collectively. And so the hinge pin is our choice. The more we do, the less power the enemy has. The less we obey, the more power the enemy has over our life and in this world. And again, it all revolves around our free will. And look, this has been proven historically as the church has waxed and waned around our free choice. Clearly, right now, we are the underdog. But again, so is the Lord at the end of his ministry in life. But the truth is that God always prevails. And that is the hope in the midst of the darkness that we are living in. The victory is already ours. And the devil is trying to convince us otherwise. The only question that we need to answer for ourselves is, what side are we on? And don't quickly answer, oh, clearly I'm on the right side. Never forget the words as he kissed him. Surely it is not I, Rabbi. The true believers questioned whether or not they were faithful. As the church enters into her passion, however long it may be, what side do you choose to be on? What side are you choosing right now to be on? All we need to do is look to the passion. Are you the Roman soldiers and hostile crowd, rebelling, spitting in his face, mocking him, putting him to death? Not out here. But by your choice, in the temple of your heart? What do you stand for? Maybe you're that simple bystander, just curious as to what's going on. Ha! Another moment of entertainment. What's in the paper today? What new scandal has arisen in the church? But you have no real commitment. You may claim to be Christian, but you know in your heart you stand for so very little. You is what you care about. And then, of course, there's the disinterested. What's happening? Well, I could really care less. As long as I'm okay. How's the market? How's my business? How's my health? Or are you a radical, faithful follower? With him every step of the way, willing to risk your own life in order to remain faithful to him. There were three. A young man by the name of John, probably about 17 years old, full of young, masculine zeal. Not just his Lord, but more of a father to him. A prostitute. Before we think we're so holy, a prostitute. Because she was forgiven and knew his mercy and love, nothing else in her life but him mattered any longer. She was there. And his mother. The love of a mother. We are living in one of the most historical time periods of the world. And these are some very deep questions that each and every one of us needs to answer. When it is all over, how will your story be told in heaven? Which, as the Lord tells us today, is forever. I can't encourage you enough to ponder on that. What is this life compared to the eternal now? What in this life is worth anything compared to forever? How will your story be told if you died today? What have you done for him and his people? What camp do you belong to? How deep is your actual living faith? How committed are you to the church? Because in and as much as you love the bride of the Lord, who houses his life in the sacraments, is the measure of how much you love Christ. As we come to receive Holy Communion today, just a simple question, but a profoundly important one. Lord, do I love you and do I serve your kingdom? Or do I worship the kingdom of the world?